My name is Claire. I am 31 years old. I grew up in a small house with one older brother, a mother who loved us quietly and completely, and the kind of childhood that feels ordinary until the day it isn't anymore. I thought I knew everything about my family. I was wrong about that. And the woman who opened that door, the one who said my name like she owned it, was about to find out what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. This is my story. If you enjoy stories like this, please hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a single one. Like this video and drop a comment telling me where in the world you are watching from. I read every comment. Every single one. Let me tell you about Aaron. Aaron is 4 years older than me. We grew up sharing the same small house, the same Saturday morning cartoons, the same mother who made tea at every crisis and sang when she thought no one was listening. When our father left, I was 8, Aaron was 12. It was Aaron who got up first every morning and made sure I had breakfast before school. When I was 16 and fell apart over something I am now too old to remember clearly, it was Aaron who sat on the floor outside my bedroom door and talked to me through it until I opened it. When our mother got sick, we took turns at the hospital. We managed the paperwork together. We sat with her in the evenings when the ward went quiet and held her hands and pretended to be braver than we were. When she passed 4 years ago, Aaron and I stood at her graveside and I remember thinking, whatever life throws at us, at least I have my brother. I was wrong about that too. It started with silence. 3 weeks of almost nothing. Short texts. Been busy. Talk soon. I knew that tone. I had heard it from Aaron once before years ago when he had gotten into serious financial trouble and spent 3 months carrying it alone before finally breaking down and telling me. I recognized the shape of what he did when he was hiding something. So I called his workplace. Just to check. Just to hear from someone else that he was showing up and breathing and fine. The receptionist paused for a moment too long. Aaron hasn't worked here, she said carefully, for about 5 months. 5 months. He had been gone from that job for 5 months and had said nothing. Every time I had asked how work was, he had given me a short answer and I had taken it because that is what you do with people you trust. I stopped trusting so easily after that phone call. A cousin mentioned at a family dinner, casually the way people mention things they assume everyone already knows, that Aaron had moved. Not to a new apartment nearby. To a whole different town. 6 hours away. Nobody knew when. Nobody had thought to ask why. I found his new address through the same cousin. And then I went on to Aaron's Facebook, which he barely used, and I found a photo. The first post in 4 months. Aaron standing in front of a house I had never seen, smiling in a way I had not seen him smile in years. Beside him, close enough that her hand was resting on his arm, was a woman I had never seen in my life. I showed the photo to my aunt. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she went very still. That woman, she said slowly, was at your mother's funeral. She stood at the very back. I thought she was a neighbor. My mother's funeral. This woman had been at my mother's funeral and Aaron had said nothing. Not then. Not after. Not in 4 years. I put my phone in my pocket and I made a decision. I was not going to call ahead. I got in my car on a Saturday morning and I drove. 2 hours in, my phone buzzed at a red light. Text from Aaron. Hey, you good? The first real message in weeks. Out of nowhere. Like something had told him to reach out at exactly this moment. Like an alarm had gone off somewhere that I was getting too close. I put the phone down and kept driving. Those 6 hours gave me too much time inside my own head. I replayed the last 2 years in a different light. Aaron missing Christmas with an excuse that had seemed reasonable at the time. Aaron not showing up when I had surgery. Something that had hurt me more than I had ever admitted out loud. Aaron sending a sum of money once with no note, no explanation, no call. Just a transfer. Like money was a substitute for honesty. Each memory, replayed in this new light, landed differently. I pulled into the street just after noon. Aaron's car was in the driveway. And next to it, a second car. Dark red. Something about it nagged at me. I had this strange, crawling feeling that I had seen it before. Parked somewhere it shouldn't have been, at a time that hadn't made sense. I got out. I walked up the path. I knocked. Footsteps. A pause. The kind just before a door opens when someone is checking through a peephole or deciding how to arrange their face. The door opened. It was not Aaron. The woman from the photo was standing in front of me. Late 30s. Calm. The particular kind of stillness that belongs to someone who has been preparing for a moment. She looked at me for exactly 1 second. Then she said my name. All 3 parts of it. First, middle, last. My middle name. The one I had legally changed 4 years ago after our mother died. A private decision I had made as a small act of reclaiming something, a name almost nobody in the world knew. A name I had never mentioned to Aaron because it had never come up in any way that felt important enough to bring into a phone call. My full name. in her mouth, said with complete certainty. The ground did something strange under my feet. She stepped aside. An invitation. I walked in. The house was clean and orderly, and on the wall of the hallway, this is where my stomach dropped, there were framed photos. Aaron at different ages. Family holidays I recognized. A Christmas I had been at, photographed from a familiar angle. And then one photo that made me stop completely. It was taken inside my mother's house. Not in a public room during a gathering. From an angle that only made sense if the person holding the camera had been inside that house regularly. Not as a guest. As someone who moved through it freely. Someone who knew it well enough to know which corner of which room caught the best light. I turned around slowly. "Who are you?" I said. She looked at me with an expression I could not immediately read. Not defensive, not apologetic, not smug. Something more complicated than all of those. "I think Aaron should answer that," she said. Footsteps on the stairs. Aaron appeared at the top. He saw me and his face did something I had never seen it do before. Not surprise. Something more like a man who has rehearsed a moment so many times that the actual arrival of it produces not shock but a very complicated mixture of relief and dread. He came down. He crossed the room. He hugged me, his arms, familiar and solid, the same hug from my whole life, but with the particular weight of someone who has been holding something in for years and knows they are about to finally let it go. He pulled back. He opened his mouth. The woman came in from the kitchen with 3 cups of tea. She set them on the table, sat down in the armchair like she had every right to be there, and looked at me and said, "Claire, there is a lot your brother has been trying to find the right time to tell you." Aaron sat down. He looked at his hands, and then he told me everything. The secret was 6 years old. Aaron started from the beginning. A phone call from our mother asking him to come over alone. He had assumed it was about her health. He had gone and sat at the kitchen table she had owned for 30 years and she had told him something she had never told anyone. Before she met our father. Before any of us existed. Our mother had been pregnant. She was very young. The circumstances were painful. She had made the decision a very young, very frightened woman makes when she has no support and no clear path forward. She had given the baby up. She had never spoken of it again. For 40 years. She had buried it so deeply and carried it so quietly that she had almost managed to convince herself it was someone else's story. And then DNA testing became something anyone could access from their kitchen table. Somewhere out there a woman in her late 30s had swabbed the inside of her cheek and mailed it off and waited. The match came back to our mother's profile. She made contact. And our mother, 70 years old, not in perfect health, made the terrifying decision to respond. They had met 11 times before our mother died. 11 real meetings in private over 2 years. Aaron had been told on the 9th visit and sworn to silence while our mother worked up the courage to tell me. She ran out of time. But here is where the story changes. Here is where the woman sitting in that armchair stopped being just a revelation and started being something else entirely. Her name was Renee. She was our half-sister. Our mother's blood in her veins the same way it ran through mine. And I wanted to feel only that. Only the weight and wonder of it. But something in the room was wrong in a way I could not yet name, and I have learned in my life to pay attention to that feeling. I asked Aaron to show me the folder, the documents our mother had left. He brought it from upstairs. Thick. Too thick to be simple. I went through it carefully, fully. The property transfer document. The savings account. The letters. And then I found something that Aaron did not know was in there. A printed email chain. Buried near the bottom, tucked inside a folded letter like someone had placed it there deliberately, like our mother had placed it there deliberately, knowing I would eventually be the one to find it. The email chain was between Renee and a man named Patrick. Patrick was a lawyer. Not a family lawyer. A property lawyer specializing in estate transfers and inheritance disputes. The chain was dated 14 months before our mother died. I read it once. Then I read it again. Renee had contacted Patrick 18 months before our mother passed. Before our mother had even told Aaron about her. At a point when the two of them had met perhaps 3 or 4 times. The emails discussed the property, our mother's house, its estimated value, the legal mechanisms available for transferring property outside of a standard will, and the particular advantages of doing so while the owner was still living. Renee had not come into our mother's life looking for family. She had come looking for the house. I sat very still with those pages in my lap. I thought about the DNA match, the careful, patient contact, the 11 meetings over 2 years, the way Renee had positioned herself, the soft voice, the sad eyes, the line about being the apology our mother had spent her life writing. Every single thing designed to make an elderly woman with a guilty secret feel that the only way to make it right was to give this woman something real. Something lasting. Something worth $400,000. I looked up. Renee was watching me from the armchair. She had been watching me since I picked up that folder. She had been watching my face the way you watch a face when you are waiting to see if someone has found the thing you forgot to remove. I held her gaze. I said nothing. I closed the folder. I put it back on the table. And I smiled at her the way she had smiled at me, with something more complicated than any single expression could contain. "Thank you for the tea," I said. "I need to make a quick call. I'll be just a minute." I walked out the front door. I sat in my car. I called my mother's estate lawyer, a woman named Patricia who had handled the property transfer and who had, I now remembered, expressed a quiet concern at the time that she had professional obligations that prevented her from stating more plainly. I had not understood what she was trying to tell me then. I understood it now. I told Patricia what I had found. I described the email chain. I gave her the dates. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Claire, I have been waiting for someone in your family to call me for 14 months. There are things I was not able to raise without a family member initiating a review. You have just initiated one." She told me that a property transfer made under undue influence, specifically a transfer made to someone who had deliberately cultivated a relationship with a vulnerable elderly person for the purpose of acquiring assets, could be legally challenged. That the standard of evidence required was not a criminal one. That the email chain I had just described, if it said what I thought it said, was significant. She told me to photograph every page of that chain and send it to her before I left that house. I went back inside. I apologized for the delay. I sat back down. I asked Aaron to give Renee and me a few minutes alone. Aaron looked between us. Then he left the room. I put the folder back on the table. I opened it to the email chain. I laid it flat in front of Renee and I smoothed it with my hand. I watched her face. She looked at the pages. She looked at me. The calm she had been wearing since she opened the door did something complicated. It didn't fall apart, she was too controlled for that. But something behind it shifted like a light going off in a back room. "Where did you find that?" she said. "Our mother left it for me," I said. She put it in the folder herself. Right at the bottom. Under everything else. Renee said nothing. "She knew," I said. "She figured it out. Maybe not at the beginning. But before she died she knew what you had been doing. And she couldn't take the property transfer back by then. The paperwork was already done, you had made sure of that. But she could leave me the evidence. She could make sure that when the time came I would have what I needed." The room was very quiet. "She trusted me with the hardest truth of her life," I said. "Twice. Once in a letter. Once in a folder at the bottom of a pile of documents that she knew you would never think to look through because you had already gotten what you came for." Renee looked at the table. I picked up my phone. I photographed every page of the email chain. I sent them to Patricia. I put my phone back in my pocket. "My lawyer will be in touch," I said. "You should probably get one too." I called Aaron back into the room. I told him everything. About Patrick the property lawyer. About the email chain. About the timeline that placed Renee's legal planning 18 months before our mother had even told him she existed. Aaron sat down slowly, like someone whose legs have stopped working properly. He looked at Renee. She did not deny it. What she said, and I will give her this, it was more honest than I expected, was that it had started as a plan and become something real. That she had genuinely come to love our mother. That the two things had been true at the same time and she had not known how to separate them. I sat with that for a moment. Then I said, "That is for a court to decide how much weight to give." The legal process took 11 months. Patricia was methodical and thorough and deeply, quietly pleased to have the email chain in her possession. Renee's lawyer was competent but working with a weak hand. The evidence of premeditated asset acquisition was clear. The property transfer was successfully challenged on grounds of undue influence. The house went to Aaron and me, equally, as our mother had originally intended before someone had patiently, carefully rearranged her guilt into a legal document. Renee did not contest the final ruling. She signed the papers on a Tuesday morning. I was told she did it quietly without drama, and left the lawyer's office without speaking to anyone. I thought I would feel triumphant when it was over. I didn't exactly. It was more like the feeling when a window is opened in a room that has been closed too long. Just air. Just the ability to breathe normally. But here is the part of the story that surprises me most when I tell it. Because she had genuinely loved our mother. I believe that. I believe it can be true at the same time as everything else that was also true. People are complicated in ways that don't resolve neatly, and my mother had understood that better than anyone, had lived inside that complexity for 40 years. So 6 months after the ruling, I did something nobody expected. I called Renee. Not to forgive what she had done. That is a longer and more private process. Not to offer friendship because trust, once it has been built on a lie, has to be rebuilt from the ground up, and I had no obligation to begin that work. I called because our mother had met this woman 11 times. Had cried on the phone with her. Had called her by name in a way nobody ever had. Had written in a letter that she was the apology she spent her whole life writing. And I called because of what I had found in my own mother's handwriting, in the letter addressed to me, in the last paragraph, after everything else had been said. Whatever Renee has done or will do, she is still your blood. I am leaving that for you to decide what to do with. Not now. Maybe not for a long time. But someday when you are ready, I hope you will decide to know her. The real version. The one underneath everything else. She exists. I saw her. And she is worth knowing. I sat on my kitchen floor and I read that paragraph until I had memorized it. Then I made the call. Renee picked up on the third ring. She didn't say anything. Neither did I for a moment. Then I said, I'm not calling to be friends. I'm not calling to pretend any of this was okay. I'm calling because our mother asked me to. And I do not break promises to my mother. Renee said, I know. Neither do I. We talked for 40 minutes. It was not easy. It was not warm. It was two people sitting inside the wreckage of something and deciding, slowly and without any certainty about where it led, to keep talking. It was a start. Aaron and I kept the house. We go there together sometimes, the two of us, and we sit in the kitchen with the table she owned for 30 years and we drink tea and we talk about her. The real version. The full version. The woman who had loved us and carried something enormous and done her imperfect best. On the kitchen counter, in a small frame Aaron put there the first time we came back, is the last photo we have of the three of us together. Our mother is in the middle. She is looking at the camera. She is not smiling exactly, but there is something in her expression that I have spent 4 years trying to name and have only recently found the word for. The word is relief. Like a woman who has been carrying something heavy for a very long time and has finally, in the last chapter, found a way to set it down. I keep that photo in my mind on the hard days. I keep the letter in my jacket pocket, right next to my heart without thinking about it, which is where it has been ever since. Thank you for staying with this story all the way to the end. If it moved you, subscribe, hit the bell and drop a comment below. Tell me where in the world you are watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one. See you in the next story.